Hey, Gabrolek,
Hey, Gabriel Jose.
where are we today?
It doesn't matter because this is our 250th episode,
And that's the reason why it doesn't matter where we are. We could be on the moon.
right? It doesn't matter. I'm not on the moon, but it still doesn't matter.
It still doesn't matter where you are. Okay, that's fair. But no, we're still in our respective places. It's like I think that's the idea of going to dive bars didn't work out too much.
Pandemic, and then you moved away. And
Yeah,
then
I betrayed. I betrayed this podcast. I betrayed this podcast. But no, this is, as you say, is the episode 250, and it's special not only because not because of the movie. I could say that the movie has been a bit more of a pending one for me that I have been wanted to watch for a while, but it's more because it's the end of an era.
And what era is that?
Is the era, as I was saying, of not going to dive bars and talk about cinema, but it's the era of actually just like closing this podcast after 250 episodes. I think that most podcasts out there, they would do like short seasons of like 20 episodes or so. We have done a single season of 250 episodes plus bonuses. So it sounds like it has been a good run, and I think there is a bit of a time for just like taking a short break and actually like just reframing our podcast a tiny bit.
Figuring out what the future is for us.
Exactly, yeah. But yeah, and as I was saying, the movie was not special, but I think that it was like an interesting pick, that it was The Executioner by Berlanga. Sorry, but I actually didn't prepare this part. Luis García
Berlanga.
Can you say the name again, please?
I will not. I see your judgmental Spanish face, and I won't.
Okay, yeah, Luis García Berlanga from 1965, and this was my...
And this is
63.
important because there's like 7 movies called The Executioner, and I almost watched the one wrong.
When you told me that, I was just joking. I was watching this with my boyfriend and a friend of mine exactly when you asked me, and I was telling my boyfriend, he's like, I have no idea how Blake achieves this, because it's not the first or the second time that you start watching another version of another version of the same movie. Even with Lolita, I think that you started watching like the 90s version.
Yep.
Okay. But yeah,
you're the one in charge of our relationship. So when we go bar hopping, you always tell me the name and where we're going, and I don't listen, and I just follow you.
Yep.
So,
yeah, it's my fault. It's my fault for not telling you the year of the movie. Okay, fair. But I told you that it was a Spanish movie. I thought that at least with that, you could get it. But
it's true. And when I sent the picture, I realized those were all American actors, and I was like, nope, that's definitely the wrong one.
But yeah, as I was saying, this is a Spanish movie from 1963. And I pick it because there is another movie that I really like from Berlanga that I think that I have been telling you to watch it since we know each other. That is called Bienvenido, Mr. Marshall. Welcome, Mr. Marshall. That is a dark comedy. But that one is like significantly harder to find. At least this one is that the Criterion Collection got a glimpse of it and they decided to get it. But it is a movie that all of my family has recommended to me. That is everyone. Yeah. Okay. Both of them, it's a bit more of when they talk about cinema in Spain during the censorship, is that they always mention Berlanga as like, hey, this guy knew how to play around the censorship for just doing very, I don't know, like critique cinema, but also at the same time, like turning it into a bit more absurd comedy. So yeah, I was curious, as it was always like one of my pending homework, to watch about like how this played out, and I wanted to watch it with you for actually just like seeing how a non-Spaniard would feel about it.
I'm looking forward to this conversation because I feel like I may have missed some things.
Maybe. Maybe. But yeah, so as this was my pick, what was this movie about?
So this movie is fairly simple in its plot. We start out the film meeting Amadeo, who is an executioner in Madrid. And I wanted to ask you, when did Spain, they don't have a capital punishment, right, anymore?
Not anymore. It's that it was abolished just after Franco.
Okay.
So 75.
Okay, 75.
Yeah.
So this is right towards the end of capital punishment in Spain. So we meet Amadeo. He's an older man. He seems to be lovely, but he's very traditional. And he's an executioner, which I understand it's a difficult job, but everyone seems to despise him around him because of his job. Everyone keeps saying, "We're decent people. How can you be here?" Which again, I get, but it's a job like any other, right? So Amadeo goes to kill someone, to execute someone. And at the location of the execution, he meets a funeral parlor employee named Jose Luis. Mm-hmm. And Amadeo kind of has a rejection, not of Amadeo, but just the rejection of, executing someone, which I totally understand. Jose Luis cannot find a girlfriend because he works in a funeral parlor, which people seem to find equally as repulsive is a strong word, but it's just like, hey, he works in a funeral
Disgusting,
parlor.
Yeah.
Jose Luis lives with his... I didn't quite understand who that family was. Is it his brother and his sister-in-law?
Yep, he's with his brother and sister-in-law in a garden unit. Let's go with that.
Not ideal living situations. And also Amadeo lives alone with his daughter, and also not ideal living situations. And nobody will date Amadeo's daughter, Carmen. Is it Carmen? Yeah.
Yep.
Nobody will date her, and they're all kind of living in not even semi-poverty, kind of basically poverty. Is that an accurate read of the 70s in Spain? Okay.
Yeah, I would go with that. Well, it's 60s. And yeah, Spain was not a rich country.
So Jose Luis and Carmen end up hitting it off, and they start an extramarital sexual relationship, which was very unacceptable, clearly, at the time. Yeah. Everything is very, very Catholic in this film, which I think was probably reflective of
the reality of the country, yeah.
So they end up... Jose Luis gets Carmen pregnant, and at that point, they come out to Amadeo and say he catches them basically in bed together. And they said, "Look, this isn't just a fling. We love each other. We want to get married." Which I couldn't tell if it was sincere, but it really did seem sincere. Jose Luis seems to love Carmen through the end of the film. So the day that Amadeo catches them in bed, Amadeo has come home super thrilled that as a civil servant, the government has decided to give him an apartment, which would elevate their living status. The apartment is on the 3rd floor with views of the mountains. The apartment building is being built, but they go to visit the site. And they find out at that time that the government has promised this apartment to another family. And the other family is disgusted by their professions. And they go to the government office to basically say what's going on. This apartment was promised to 2 families. Wait, am I getting this wrong?
No. I mean, it was promised to 2 families because of a bureaucratic mistake, but it's that because they start talking like with the, not really like landlord, but a bit more of the property managers, is that they actually said, is like, oh, but this says that you're going to be retiring in 2 months and you're going to be receiving this apartment in 4 months, and you are not going to be receiving it if you are not actively working as a public worker.
So there's this period of time where he tries to prove that his daughter is not married and that his daughter needs the apartment. And then Amadeo and Carmen realize that they can coerce Jose Luis to take the father-in-law's place as executioner. And Jose Luis does not, he wants nothing about this, like nothing to do with this. He cannot bring himself to even think about the idea of killing someone, but because of the pressure from Amadeo and Carmen, he becomes employed as the executioner, and every time someone's sentenced to death, he's like freaking out. Or if somebody kills a hooker, which is a real situation in the movie, he said, "What happened with that murder?" And they're like, "Oh, he got away." And they're like, "Oh, thank God, I don't have to." And then there's another criminal that's set to be executed, but then the church comes in and it looks like there's going to be a pardon, but then the father's like, "No, there's no pardon, like you're going to have to kill this guy." And basically at some point, it becomes clear he's going to have to execute someone, and he goes in to quit. He's like, no, put my wife and kid on the streets. I don't care. Fine, this isn't happening. But nobody will let him, like including the police, the government people, Carmen, Amadeo. And at some point, he's basically dragged into the executioner space as if he were the one that's going to execute. Like, he can't stand up, he's going to be sick, and everyone helps him go in. And ultimately, spoiler alert, this was 50 years ago, he does kill someone, and it really kind of devastates him, but he sticks with Carmen and his newborn child, which is a son, and he's like, I'm never going to do this again, and that's the end.
And I like what the father-in-law says at that time. That is like, oh, don't worry. I mean, I said the same thing the first time too.
It's like, it's easier. It's totally fine.
Yeah, it's like, the first time is like the hardest, but don't worry. And I like how he actually like steps into this, as you say, it's like he's coerced into the job, but it's also under the premise that is like most of the time is like it's not going to happen. And it's like at the same time, it's like when you're about to kill someone, is that you can just like, just leave your position at a point and you don't have to kill anyone. But when he gets to the position of actually like you can renounce, is that the social pressure of everyone's like, no, come on, just do it. It's like, it's fine, you're already here. It's like, you don't want to leave the poor guy like just waiting to be, executed for 3 weeks. That would be pretty mean,
Yeah, there's all these moralistic arguments. He's like, hey, these guys are sentenced to death. It's your obligation to help them out.
Exactly. So you're helping them out at the end of the day. So what did you think?
Okay, so this movie was described as a black comedy. I couldn't quite see the comedy. I'm gonna be honest. I felt so bad for Jose Luis that I was just bummed. So I grew up in a very intense religion. I think you did kind of too. And the biggest sin I could commit as a teenager was sex. So I used to have nightmares that I didn't even have sex dreams. I had dreams that I had sex and then my world ended, right? And then when I became an adult and was having sex, that obviously like went away. And so I started to have dreams about killing someone, because that's the only thing you could do in my religion worse than having sex was killing someone. And so I think there was a little bit of like triggering, like that dude had to kill someone. That's the worst thing you can do, is murder someone. So there was never any like laugh out loud moment for me. Were there any for you?
Yeah, they were, but the problem, and this is the part that was like really curious, is because if you know about the culture in Spain, or like how they are treating each other, is that there is a bit of a slice of life comedy there. So it's true, you can feel bad for Jose Luis, but Jose Luis also, I don't believe that he truly loves Carmen that much. Is that he actually got infatuated with her, but he was always open about like, hey, I want to go to Germany. I want to learn like I want to become a mechanic, work in cars. I want to be like free as a bird. I don't want to be like tied down in here. And even Carmen says that is like, hey, I also want to leave. I want to go to France or anywhere else that is not here. But it's a bit more of the commentary of, it's like, well, during the dictatorship, it's like most people were like just trapped. It didn't matter what you wanted or not. And it's also like what happened with Jose Luis, that is like, he wants to just avoid having to kill someone, but it's a bit more of the social, because one way or another is like he gets forced into this situation. It's a bit more about like how the reality, I feel like during the time of Franco also was, is that, hey, you may have like very good principles and whatever, that is pretty easy that you're going to be like dragged a step at a time. It's not even like a bit like a boiling frog situation. It's like when you realize, it's like when you're like so deep, and it's like this case, the guy in the prison, and it's like, oh shit, it's like I didn't realize like some time ago of all of these steps that it was a non-reversible situation that I was doing.
And I think I missed that. I didn't understand exactly that it was a commentary on basically the politics of the time, or the tyranny of the time. That makes more sense. And I've studied a lot of literature, similar metaphors in Russian literature. So now this makes a lot more sense.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Okay, so I figured there were things that I was missing culturally, and it's fine. My major complaint, and we've talked about this before, is that in Steven Spielberg movies, there's just people talking nonstop. There's children screaming. There's like all of this noise. Nobody stops talking. Nobody stops talking for this entire runtime. Like just nonstop people saying nonsense.
I agree with that, but it's like Steven Spielberg movies usually are more than 2 hours.
It's true, and this was 90 minutes. So
Okay.
so
yeah, this is not. I think that I told you there is like this scene that they also want to put like a bit of the. I know that it's a joke at the end of the day, but it's that they want to do like a bit of the very classic or like how do you say, like conservative part of Spain, and then you have like small glimpses of cultural or modern people. So when they are in the book fair. And they're like in the hat, and the guy is like just signing a book about like the torture method, the execution method that they use, the garrote. Is that there is like this couple that says that, oh, do you have anything by Berman or Antonioni? Yeah. Is like, oh, Ingrid Bergman? Is it? No. Like, are you dumb or something? But then it's like, I like how the last scene when there is like this group of young people like partying on the boat and just like sailing away. That it just feels like, oh, I had the feeling that there's a bit of a wink to La Ventura right now.
I was going to ask for your take on that scene because it felt so out of place, but it was large scale and beautiful, and I thought this is where they spent their budget. Explain to me what you took away from that scene.
I thought that it was a bit more like where the rest of the world is moving already in a complete different direction, and they're like thinking about like other stuff and they are enjoying life. Is that this guy is struggling because he had to kill someone for keeping a fucking apartment.
Okay, I'm seeing the humor in this now. It passed me over in the film, but okay, that's kind of funny.
Yeah, and it was like super ironic. I mean, I was like laughing out loud because I was thinking about like, dude, this is like a wink to Antonioni and La Ventura right now. It's like, and then maybe like a bit of a social commentary that you can go like to the hedonic side, but it's like just seeing like the contrast in between like the guy with the wife in this world with 200 people, and it's like, yeah, I murdered someone, and it's like, yeah, but you get used to that, don't worry. And while these guys are like just enjoying life without any kind of worry.
A high spectacle show, yeah.
Yep.
I also found the conversation. So they execute the criminals using a garrote, I think.
Garrote, yeah.
In Spanish, but I think you say garrote. I should know this, reading as much about serial killers as I do, which seems to me inhumane. And they showed the tools of the execution, and then Amadeo goes off on this lecture about how inhumane Americans are by using electricity to kill people. Yeah. I was like, am I ethnocentric in thinking that's more humane? I don't understand.
For me, it was a bit more about like, look, you may be right or you may be wrong, but it's that you're still executing someone.
I know you're arguing about the best way to murder someone. It's like,
exactly, which one is the most humane part? Which one is the most humane way of executing someone?
And then look at this, 50 years later, America's still executing people, and Spain's like, hey, we've rised above this.
Yeah, we graduated from this. He said, when are you? I honestly like it a lot, but it's also because the other movie that I know him from, Welcome, Mr. Marshall, it has like the same kind of very satirical and ironic perspective of social commentary about like, yeah, you can just watch it for the face value, but when you try to connect about like what was happening at that time, is like, oh, okay, I see how he got away with this. It's like just making it a slice of life comedy, a bit of a dark comedy. Is like probably the censorship is not going to say anything about it, but then when you start analyzing about like, oh, the comedy is about like how he's getting pushed into doing this, but it's also, and that he doesn't have an escape, but it's the reality there. The censorship probably didn't want people to consume that.
It's interesting though that you said that Capital Punishment ended in 1975. Is that that's accurate?
Yeah.
This came out
so in 1963, yeah.
Oh, 1963. That's right. I was wondering if like the censors saw the end of the end was coming. No, this was way, way, way before that.
No, because at that time I think that probably some people were thinking that Franco would live forever. And then the second part, it was more like they always thought that is hey, after Franco, he could actually like pass the baton to someone else.
To another dictator that was super intense.
Yep. And I think that it was a bit more of well, we don't have to go into politics here, but it's things changed a bit in the last years of life from Franco, and that's why we transition like towards monarchical, more democracy.
There's still a king of Spain, right?
Yes, there is still one.
But is it like a figurehead, like the British monarchy?
Yeah, it's just a figurehead. No, it's just a figurehead. It's that we are a democracy, and he's just like a parliament, not even like a parliamentary. It's a bit more of a representative,
an honorary guest, like people who get honorary Oscars. Like, yeah, you're a part of the Academy.
Yeah, I think that in this case is more of is the idea of having some stable figure that is not associated with any political party.
Got it.
But I can tell you that specific political parties attach themselves more to him than others.
So they're like monarchists that are like, we are loyal to the king.
Exactly. The king is like the best thing that ever happened.
Interesting.
Because partially, and this is my read, hopefully no one from Spain listen to this, but I think that they can see him as a bit of a continuation from the regime, from the Franco regime. As Franco was not like, bring me a king, any king. No, he was a bit more like, hey, I want the Bourbons to come back. And I want this guy.
Well, now I want to take a class in Spanish history, but we're getting off track.
Yeah.
So I will say that I thought the film was entertaining. It was very, very clear to me that I was missing a lot culturally. I appreciate the conversation because it opened my eyes to some things and I can appreciate it more, which is the whole point of film criticism, right? It's to like, discuss things and figure out what they're saying. Yeah, this was interesting, and I'm glad you had me watch it because this is without a doubt a film I never would have watched without prompting.
Yeah, and I was even surprised that it was in the Criterion Collection. It's like, I think that it's a good movie, but it's also, we discuss sometimes that it's a bit painful when we watch a movie and we realize that there is more to it, but because we don't have the context, the historical context, or even like the current context, is like it's hard for us to actually just know like the underlying message that it maybe thinks. Like Bacurau was one of those cases that is a
that's not film. I mean, this movie is far better than Bacurau, I want to be clear, but it's kind of the same situation where we're like, what is happening in Brazil?
Yep. In this case, it's more of I don't know exactly how to say it, but it's more of in Bacurau was like you're trying to do like a futuristic sci-fi, but there is a commentary about Brazil as a country and like the history of Brazil. In this case, it's a bit more direct about like, dude, this is the reality. It's like if you're watching in 63 in Spain, you're going to be like, oh, I get it. But when you're watching it 61 years later, as this is there's a bit of if you didn't grow up there, probably it's a bit more confusing.
Which I'm guessing is why it's a little bit more obscure, even though, as you said, it was in Criterion Channel and it was on Amazon. Like, you can easily find this, so people must be watching it to some extent.
Yeah, but you also have to search for it, you know.
Every time I watch a movie like this on Amazon, I really want to see analytics reports. How many people are renting this movie and how often?
Well, I think that you are right on the part. It's like if it's on the Criterion Channel, there are people that they're going to be like giving a try to stuff that is on the Criterion Channel, because except a handful of movies in there, I think that all movies that are on the Criterion Channel are interesting. I'm not going to say good, but I'm going to say interesting.
I agree. Armageddon.
That's the reason why I preface it with a handful of movies, except a handful of movies.
No, it was an interesting film. I liked it. And I'm going to spoil one of the questions, but this is timeless. There will always be governments like this. And so, like, the messaging is, it's timeless.
Yeah. Should we then actually go over the questions?
We should. I feel like there was one more thing I was going to say. Oh, I wanted to ask you, are there filmmakers that are just so intensely American that you feel like you can't grasp them? And my mind immediately goes to Kelly Reichardt, who did.
I was going to say Kelly Reichardt.
Okay.
No. I understand her, but also at the same time, it's like we only watch Mix Cut Off for the podcast, and it's like I understood it because it's a Western kind of thing, and it's like, hey, at least like this part of the story of the United States has been done, like all of the pioneers and the likes. It has been done like so many times that it's like I get it, but not because I study about it. It's because I watch a lot of cinema, and I had the feeling that unless you have a study about Spain or live in Spain, this movie is a bit harder to grasp.
Did you watch Old Joy?
I don't think so.
First Cow?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. Okay, let's go over the questions.
Oh, there was one thing. What do you think of the scene when Jose Luis, and I don't remember like who is his partner, go to the airport to pick up like the not a corpse, like the box,
Oh, that was the scene that I found the funniest, because they pick up a body from a plane, and they're talking about how, oh, look at the plane, it has an opening in the bottom, that must be for the bombs. And then the machine that's taking the casket, they're like talking about, I think, the apartment, and they're just no respect at all, but they're like, hold on, slow down, we're losing the family, and the family's like running behind.
Right behind, but at the same time, like they cannot hear anything.
Like, okay, this is comedy.
I was telling my boyfriend that it's like, dude, this is like the most Buñuel scene that I've seen in a very long time.
Yeah, and it's very Charm of the Bourgeoisie. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And I was like, dude, this is exactly like this Charm of the Bourgeoisie when they are like walking, and then in a rush and then not. And it's like, this is so absurd, but at the same time, like so commentary about like the people that is like at the end the story was like the guy, so like the girl had married like someone from the United States by proxy, and she had never seen the guy before. She only had like a picture of reference.
Yeah. And then she doesn't recognize him.
She doesn't like.
Well, yeah, you never.
She was catfish, basically. But yeah, let's go about the questions. Would you watch it again?
I would, especially after this conversation, and I have more context. I would watch it again and watch for the political satire. Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely would watch it again. It's like to the point that I regret that I didn't buy it on the last sale at the Criterion shop. And I think that is a movie that I would like to watch always with people that they are not so familiar about American history, about Spanish history.
So you could teach them, mentor
exactly.
them.
I can feel superior to them. Like, oh, look at this dumb bastard.
You don't know about this?
No, but I think that is an interesting kind of. You watch a movie, but it's one of. You get like a 2-for-1 kind of thing. That is that you watch a movie, and then when you talk a bit more, is like when you actually realize, well, oh, I understand like what is behind it. But I think that is enjoyable also for the face value of it. At least I think. But, yeah. Hey. Would you recommend this movie?
It's not that I wouldn't recommend it. I just can't imagine a situation where I would. Especially because right now I feel like I don't fully understand it and I want to rewatch it. I'll say yes, there's nothing wrong with this film, but I would want to get a firmer grasp on how I feel about it before I
recommend it. Yeah, that's fair. I would definitely recommend it. I really like it, and I like the I don't know, like the multi-layer perspective of it. Now, who to recommend it to? I would recommend it to someone from Spain. But to someone from the States, it's not one of the first movies that it will come up. It's like if someone asks me about, like, can you recommend a Spanish movie? I would recommend any Almodovar movie, many other movies. And then it's like, oh no, I want something older. Probably I would go to check a list. I would recommend like Viridiana before recommending this, for example.
Yeah, I was going to go like Buñuel for me. I would immediately go there and Almodovar. And Quinceañera.
Thanks. One day I'm going to force you to rewatch that shit. Would you remember The Executioner?
I think so. Despite the endless talking, the plot is fairly simple. So the plot is going to be memorable. I'll forget certain scenes. Like I had already kind of forgotten that airplane scene, the scene on the boat in the cave. I'll forget parts of it, but overall, I'll remember.
Yeah, I think that I could remember it too. As you said, the story is not that complex, but the details are not that critical. I just feel like you can just complete everything else, by yourself. Is there anything artistic about it?
Yeah, I think the performances were good. I think the writing, even though it was too verbose for me, I think it was good. At least the subtitled version, I enjoyed the writing. Yeah.
I would go with yes. I mean, I like the script, but I also like, and I always think that there is merit to these movies that they have like an underlying messaging. But I think that even from the shooting perspective, it was fairly decent. Not only for the final scene when it's like they pan out and you see like the other guys going in the boat, but also like the scene when he's on the prison and is that they're like taking the prisoner that is going to be executed. And
that was
yeah.
When the two parties were walking in that huge white room, I like that.
And they just leave like the hat behind and they run. And what I was telling you that you made like a comment and it says like, hey, it's not Antonioni. Definitely it's not like the 30 minutes looking in the island, but it's like those 3 minutes of that scene. I think that they don't say anything understandable, but it just made me think of that scene in the hotel in La Ventura when she's just walking and opening all of the doors.
I don't even remember that. We need to watch an Antonioni film.
Dude, okay, yeah. I agree with
that. You said La Ventura. Sorry, in my mind I was thinking the guy who did 8 1/2, Fellini. I'm so sorry. Yes, I remember La Ventura.
Yeah, I was like surprised, like, wait, you forgot that? And you remember like the girl like just walking through the hotel, opening all of the doors, looking for his boyfriend, for her boyfriend.
It's called Gravitas.
Sorry. Yeah, all of that movie is Gravitas. But yeah, I think that is like, it was, for being such a functional movie, there were a couple of scenes that I felt is like, this guy is fairly good, as a director, like the eye that he has is pretty good. But I think that he actually toned it down a tiny bit for it. I don't want to be one of those artsy directors like Bergman or Antonioni. Not that I couldn't.
He mentioned Bergman.
Ingrid Bergman. Is it a timeless piece?
Yes, especially now that I have some sort of understanding of the satire. Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there is no longer execution like capital punishment in Spain, but I don't think there is so much about like the capital punishment in itself. I think there is a bit more about like also like the class, the social class, about like you guys are doing like this job that is terrible, but it's like, yeah, but even society is forcing me to do this. So why are you criticizing me when you want me to do it?
I mean, it could easily translate today to some American kid who doesn't want to fly drones over Syria, and is kind of pressured into it. It can translate into any age, I think.
Yeah. Could you turn this into a TV show?
No. I don't think there's enough here. The scope of the story is very defined, and I don't think there's much left to expand into a series.
Yeah, I think that they could expand a tiny bit like the brother and the sister-in-law part. That is that they just disappear after the wedding, that they didn't even want to sign as witnesses. It's like, no, we are done with him. It's like, now that he is actually an executor, it's like, we are completely done with this guy.
I was fascinated, by the way, about the mention of money, because like the sister-in-law takes 50 pesetas out of his wallet for 2 calls, and then he mentioned something else that's 20 pesetas, and I was like, what? I don't understand. And then a book was 350 pesetas, and I was like, I don't understand the currency.
Yeah, it has been gone like for a very long time. But I forgot to mention it earlier. Did you like the scene when they're getting married? That they have like this like very nice wedding before, and then they go and they're like just removing everything about like, no. You don't deserve even like the candles. Yeah. And a part of me was thinking is that, well, this is partially because of their executioners. So we don't really
Oh,
like
see,
them
I
that
thought it
much.
was because people knew she was pregnant before marriage.
No, I thought that it was like, or A, because they didn't pay for all of the extras, or B, it was because he was an executioner. And I think that is more because of the latter, because everyone like just despised him for doing
Got
that.
it.
So, could this movie have been a short?
Frankly, yes, it could have been 45 minutes for sure.
I'll go with yes. It doesn't mean that I wanted it to be a short, but it's like from an honest perspective, it's that yes, this could have been a short. And lastly, and last, do you think that this movie could have been better?
Again, I don't feel like I fully understood it the first time I watched it, so I'm going to say no, because now I need to rewatch it with a better understanding. So no for now.
Okay, for now. I leave the door open to revisit this. I'm going to go with no. I don't think that there is any glaring problem with it. As you said, it's a very interesting movie. And I don't think that there is anything that I would dare to change, personally. And as this was my pick, I guess that you have to score first.
I'm going to go with a 7 for now, and I'll rewatch it.
Okay, sounds good. I've been going like back and forth between an 8 and an 8.5. I'm going to go with an 8.25.
All right.
Yep,
A rare
that's
quarter
good.
point.
The what?
A rare quarter point.
A rare quarter point is that we should actually just give ourselves like how do you say, like some cars that we have to use, like the Monopoly cars, you know, that we have to use for a quarter point, you know. This is how special the movie was. Come on, so what are we watching next?
Right now we're gonna pause. We're rebranding. We're gonna take a break, and we're coming back as
Cinematic Dogma.
that will be the new podcast name, and we're gonna step away, figure out everything, our website, what we're gonna look like. So right now there's no next movie, and just be on the lookout for what's next for Gaybros. Go to dive bars to talk about cinema, who's now Cinematic Dogma.
Correct. And you should be actually finding us besides on our regular like podcast tools, listening platforms or whatever. You would also be able to listen to this podcast on YouTube, to this current Gaybros Go to Dive Bars to talk about cinema.
And also visit our new website, cinematicdogma.com.
Hopefully, when this podcast is out, that website would be up. Hopefully. Okay, to everyone that has been like listening to us, thank you so much for putting with us. Hopefully, you folks will continue with us in the future in Cinematic Dogma.
And goodbye to Gaybros. Hello, Cinematic Dogma. Until next time.
Bye.